So they're the ones that's running qualitative and quantitative studies. Not that we can't, but that's all they primarily do, and a lot of them they teach. We can teach as well, obviously, but that's what they plan to go into automatically. I'm a scholar practitioner. I am a therapist, and I'm the highest level you can go. So all my research is how to better my skills as a practitioner in the field and how to disseminate information that will help other practitioners become better at what they do.
Is that what it is?
Mm-hmm.
I got a Dr. Alicia next to me. She's in social work. She's a faculty member.
Come on in. You tell me, Alicia.
Yeah. So what's that's accurate?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, not that we didn't believe you. I got to get approval from the first lady about, like what stuff means and all that, so I can be allowed to have an opinion. Sorry, what? Oh, she said congratulations, by the way. She's a little shy, so I don't make her come on camera. But I'll tell you what, I'm super excited for you. I'm very happy for you. How was the graduation celebration and all that stuff? What was that like?
It was awesome. I mean, but I'll tell you one thing, and this is why what we do is so important, because when you get to this level, it's only but so many of us, and that is scary. So on my line, we were graduating with the whole School of Social Work. And so there's doctoral level, there's master level, and bachelor's level. Out of the PhDs, there was only about 3 or 4 of them. Not more than 4. I think it was really 3, but I wasn't paying them no mind, right? So it was 3 of the PhD social works. There's 19 in my cohort, but only 17 of us chose to walk. The other 2 graduated, but they was just like done. They were so wiped out, they didn't come. So on the line, it was 17. So with their 3 and now 17, there was only 20 doctoral students all together, hundreds of masters, and maybe 50 to 80 bachelors. That's how it looked. But here's the scary part. Out of those 20 doctoral students, there was only 3 who were Black.
Oh, really? So 3 that are Black. Well, actually 3 out of 20 is actually a high number. Did you know that?
It's despicable. No, but yes, I know in terms of our field, yes, it is.
Right. Yeah, it's not a good number, but it's higher than average, right? I mean, when I got my PhD in finance, when I walked across that stage, I was the only African American on the planet to get a PhD in finance that year. There was not another person in the world that was Black like me who got that same degree that year. Like, the numbers in my field were non-existent. So to have even 3 out of 20 is like a lot, which is crazy. That it's like that. And then the thing about these PhD programs and the doctoral programs in general of any kind is that the politics is what throws you off. It's, you have the difficulty with the work, the coursework is tough and all that, but it ain't like, getting an MBA or law degree or even a medical degree where you just pass your test and you're going to be fine. If somebody doesn't like you, in our program, if somebody didn't like you, they could get you kicked out, no matter how smart you are. Was your program kind of like that?
Yeah, it was like that. Now, did anyone get kicked out? No, because I think we all learned how to play the game. And it's unfortunate, but it is what it is. But none of us got kicked out. People did drop out because it's time consuming. You don't have friends. You don't have a life. You're reading. You're running studies. It's crazy. So, yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous, but the politics, you just got to know how to work it. You got to know how to work it. And I was like a rebel without a cause. I was a rebel, and it didn't always go over right, but I know when to shut up and when to talk. And what I mean by that, there was one time, and I won't say who it was, but everyone who knows me knows who it was. There was one of the faculty said to me, Vashana, sometimes you just got to listen. And this was over a whole discussion about one of my first project was going to have the word Black love in it. I was doing a lot of research about that, and I still did research about it, right? But when I used the term Black love, it threw this person off, because when they're not abreast of something, or they're not in a community, or they can't infiltrate a certain community, it's upsetting. So they try to make sense of it. They always try to make sense of what they don't understand. And so this person's focus was for me to take the initiative to explain it in my work exactly what it was. And I was just saying to him, but that's the population, that's the audience I'm speaking to. I'm not going to explain it. If I was Catholic and I was writing a paper to the audience of Catholics, about, I don't know, sacrament or something, I'm not going to take the time to explain it, because if I'm explaining it, I'm not explaining it to my audience. I'm explaining it to all the outskirt audience that might read it. And I can care less about the outskirts. And that pissed him off. And he wound up saying to me that I needed to learn how to listen.
Wow.
And everyone looked at me like, wow, Sean's about to blow up. And I just said, you know what? You're right. I'm going to listen today. And I just shut my mouth.
Well, that's a real tough one. That's real interesting that so you're saying that he took issue with the fact that you wouldn't take the time to kind of explain, your perspectives on Black love, or just the reason Black love is different from other types of love, or has different issues to overcome. And he kind of took offense to that because he kind of wanted to be included, in this. He wanted you to kind of break it down.
He wanted me to explain it so that other populations or other audiences can understand it. And I said, I'm writing to my audience. So if I'm writing to everybody else, I'm trying to please everybody, in which I'm not trying to do. I'm trying to write for the narrative for my audience who needs to understand it, or who already understands it, not to make other people feel comfortable.
Yeah, well, I think that's really interesting and admirable, because you're right. I mean, I don't, I'm just trying to visualize, if I'm a faculty member at a university and somebody is writing something for, Jewish people about, the traditions and their marriages and everything else. I'm wondering just how much right I would even have to come in and say, okay, I need you in your work, as you're writing to them, I need you to write to me too, and explain what these issues are, kind of build that whole framework for me. I imagine you probably, if he just simply sat down and said, hey, Shauna, can you explain, like what this issue is? Like, I assume you would have talked to him, but I think
did, and I was explaining
it. Work, it's kind of a waste of time. Is that accurate? Or
yeah, he did ask me that, and I was explaining it directly to him, and he was like, well, that needs to be in there. Because what about people like me if we don't understand what you're writing? I said, but you're not my audience. Because I was speaking to issues directly to the Black community that we need to work on directly. This has been a bulk of all my research. I wasn't speaking to you. That's just like asking Dr. Frances Cress Welsing to write to that audience to make them feel comfortable.
Yeah,
she was educating us.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I mean, I'm even thinking about, when I remember being at Syracuse University, and maybe this is a universal problem for a lot of Black scholars. I remember being at Syracuse and wanting to, they had an initiative where they claimed that they wanted to encourage faculty to engage in the important issues of the day and to go out in public. And I went out in public, but I was addressing Black issues and addressing Black people. And I think that in their mind, it was sort of like, well, that's not really important. That's kind of worthless. If we don't get it, if it doesn't relate to us and it's not our issue, then it's not an important issue at all. So if I had been out, I think if I had been out sort of, progressively fighting on maybe LGBT rights or environmental issues or something like that, I think they would have understood that. I think that when I say, look, I'm talking to the brothers about how to survive in a racist society, ain't no white woman in my department going to understand that, And I agree. I think it is insulting when you feel like you have to go through the trouble of explaining it to them and including them in these conversations and making them comfortable when this really ain't for you. Yeah. So I agree. Well, I commend you for that. So let me ask you this. So your expertise, and I'm going to talk loud in case y'all hearing that drilling in the background. I'm sorry about that. But I want to ask you, so can you describe kind of what your expertise is and what you studied, during the course of your program and what you're most qualified to do?
Yes. So my expertise is in couples therapy, primarily with African Americans or those of the African diaspora. That is my expertise. And I study, I specialize in infidelity particularly because I know it all dates back to slave breeding and stuff. And my project is actually titled Saving Black Marriages. If anyone's interested in it, they can go to that website. It's savingblackmarriages.com. So my project is Saving Black Marriages, an Afrocentric approach to strengthening Black families. So it's really about Afrocentrism. It's really about seeing it through the lens of a person who's in the community, who identifies as a community, who's very much a part of the struggle, who has faced oppression and all these other things that we have all faced. It's from seeing it from our narrative, from our perspective. So what I did was I examined the dominant narrative on marriage and what the dominant narrative says marriage is. And then I look at it through the Afrocentric perspective and giving light or giving understanding to why we may be experiencing a lot of brokenness, so to speak, in our families, because if we're looking at it through a dominant lens, it doesn't match up for us. For one thing, the dominant lens says in order for a marriage to be healthy and to experience satisfaction, there's got to be economic adequacy. But if you, for history, has not given Black men jobs, if we have the highest unemployment rates, if we have the lowest education rates, if we have the highest incarceration rates, how can we attain economics? And I'm talking about on a macro level, how can we now satisfy that portion of having a happy marriage if we don't even have that? If the dominant narrative says that you have to be able to meet your marital obligations, but we don't own homes, we don't own properties, we don't have assets, how can we ever meet that narrative? So it's really about changing the narrative for us and saying what is it for us that we need in order to go forward inside of a relationship. And I'm using the word relationship as opposed to marriage because our circumstances are very different. There are people who've lived together, and I'm not saying this is not true for whites as well, but I'm saying when you look at the stats, it's higher among us about cohabitation for a very long time, or what we used to call common law marriage. But when you don't count those in the stats, it makes it seem like we're unmarried because you're going by the dominant narrative of what marriage is. And marriage is changing totally across the board for everybody. Marriage is a social construct. And that's been with us since the beginning of time. They used marriage against us when they first legalized it as a form of punishment. Like if you step out of their narrative, you were punished. And a lot of people don't know that. So I bring light to that information so we can really understand what's going on and how that history is affecting us in our relationships today.
So Dr. Shauna Etienne, let me ask you this basic question. What is marriage?
A social construct.
Well, there's a lot of social constructs. So what specific social construct does marriage represent? If somebody said, somebody's from another planet, they said, well, what is marriage anyway? What does that mean?
Are you asking what is American marriage?
It could be American marriage or just
because the reason why I say that, because if you go to other countries, marriage for them is not always the same for us unless they've been colonized. And if they've been colonized, then they take on the European or the Western European concept of what marriage is. But really for me, what I'm trying to let people see is there's one thing of having a legal contract, you know, that recognizes as the state or the government you married as a person. That's one thing for having that for legal purposes, for assets, for security, and all the other stuff for, they say they allege for paternity, but we already know there's so many blended families that it's not even for paternity. But the point is, if you want to look at it from a legal perspective, marriage is, in essence, is a contract. It's a contract, and you get benefits out of it. But what I don't want them to do is get to the point where there are so many of us, African Americans, Blacks, however you identify, who have been with our partners forever, and we may not be legally married, but who's to say that that's not a marriage? Who's to say that they haven't made a commitment to each other to not only raise their family, but to build a legacy?
So let me ask you this then. So, you know, you're right? I think that I've heard people question, the way marriage exists in America by saying something like this. They said, look, a commitment is a commitment. Why does it come with all these legal and financial complexities in addition to the commitment? Now, I have my theory, right? But my theory is not important. But I'd be curious. Sorry?
I said, I want to hear it.
Well, my theory is that the legal and the financial commitments, the contractual obligations, like if we get a divorce, you're gonna have to pay up, things like that. I think that they exist because I think that what marriage does in America is that it provides a type of emotional security that's linked to financial security, right? That kind of says, I need you to put your money where your mouth is, right? You can say you love me, but how do I know you're not going to walk out the door and just abandon me after I done had kids and we done, built this life together? And in that regard, it makes sense. that, you know, that you make a commitment, there has to be some sort of consequence for ending that commitment, which increases the likelihood that it sticks together. Because you think about it, you know, if you're single and you're dating, you know, you could just break up that day and move on. You know, a marriage requires months and months and months of work and preparation and a huge expense to end that relationship. And so I understand logically why it exists, but I also think that if we understand logically why that construct exists in the form that it does, we must also understand why logically some people may be hesitant to want to sign that contract. You know, because it does seem to come with a lot of complexities and some interesting baggage that says, for example, if I go to the courts and I say you were unfaithful to me multiple times and therefore I'm ending this marriage, you're gonna pay big time. You know, I'm gonna take a bunch of money from you. I might take your kids, you know, or whatever it is. And I've seen people who said, I don't want that. I can love somebody, I can commit, I can be consistent, all these things, but I don't want to be in a situation where if I am an unsatisfactory partner, I can have a significant hit to my wealth. Is that crazy for people to think that? Are they being, because some people will ridicule them and shame them and say, oh, you're a marriage phobe, or oh, you're a bad person, or you won't do the right thing. But they see, you know, think about this, you know, and I'll say this, I'll throw myself out there in the sense that I remember being young and I saw a guy cry, an older man, a mentor of mine, literally crying because he lost half of everything after 7 years of a terrible marriage. And it made me say, God, how do you cautiously move into something like that without getting taken to the cleaners?
I hear everything that you're saying. And one thing I will say before I respond to you is, in essence, and I'm just gonna shoot from the hip because it's not meant to be like to whatever. But in essence, what you're saying is also through the dominant narrative. It's through their lens. So because your mindset is you have all these assets, and that's great, right? You and I may have that, given where we are in life and our positions and what we have acquired. But the people that I work with, which there's a lot of people, they don't have assets like how I have assets. A lot of people in our community don't have that. And when their marriages dissolve, a lot of them, it just dissolves. They don't have to worry about looking at the stocks and the dividends. They don't have to worry about the real estate and the property. They don't have to worry about a lot of that stuff. They don't have to worry about pensions and all these other investments. They don't have to worry about business debts. There's a lot of stuff that maybe you and I have to worry about if our marriage is dissolved, right? But when we're looking at a macro level, we're looking at the population that I'm working with, and many of the people that through the Black Business School, the network, not all, but a lot of them that we work to help build up, a lot of them don't come with the same assets that we have. So again, we have been conditioned to live through the narrative, the dominant narrative. We have been conditioned that way, that we look for these. I'm not saying we shouldn't have these things, but we look for these things to say we have to have all of this and we have to have a contract and to get married. You go to other countries, that's not how they station a marriage. The man already knows, in a lot of cases, the man already knows that if they split, that woman gets her dowry. She gets her compensation. It goes on. There isn't a big lawyers involved and court systems. All of this whole big thing is a big money scheme. It's crazy. It's crazy. And the minute no-fault divorce was signed into law, it got worse. And the only people that's benefiting are the lawyers.
Well, you know, there's a really good documentary that I think everybody should watch. I think I might have seen it on Netflix. But it's out there somewhere. It's called Divorce Corp, CORP, and it was done by Dr. Drew, the guy on CNN. So on Divorce Corp, basically what he does is he kind of just really puts a microscope on the whole family court industry and how they made $10 billion a year from broken marriages, you know, and the terrible things they do to people and dragging people through hell. And watching Divorce Corp really, you know, it makes you think sort of like, okay, what's really happening here? And, you know, and so the conclusions I kind of walked away with was that, you know, I would tell people that, look, if you're trying to get married, just understand that that's a huge part of your whole pathway to trying to build wealth and everything else. A good marriage to the right person can be an accelerator in your success. It can really help you achieve a lot of goals. But you got to pick the right person. You got to be the right person, and you got to do your best to learn how to resolve your conflicts so you can spend more time building than you spend fighting, right? And so literally, I would say that marriage is almost something where you almost want to almost like take a class on how to resolve conflicts in your marriage. Go see a therapist like yourself that can really help, because most of the things that people fight over and divorce over are problems that could have been solved. I think the mistake is that people try to solve them on their own without any help. They want to go read a book or watch a couple of YouTube videos or go meet with a therapist. They try to figure it out on their own and they do it wrong. Is that kind of your experience as a therapist?
There's a whole nother level of understanding to it. And I think like, I love how I spent my time in this program. I love how I did it because the value that they put on Black marriages is like, there is no value, right? So you go into any community, you can see any billboard that says divorce $3.99. Just that quick in the hood. You don't go into any suburban areas where they're promoting divorce for $3.99, right? Billboards about I'm your divorce attorney, right? So it says a lot about how they look at us and how they've always viewed our relationships from the beginning, from the moment that they enslaved us. They didn't view us as anything valuable. So when we talk about marriage and it can be easily saved, I would say that's a yes and a no. And the reason why I say it's a yes and a no is because there's so much trauma that has happened to us for generations. And people say all the time, slavery was a long time ago. If you look at just the numbers, the years and the stats and, the records, then yeah, you're going to say it's a long time ago. But if you look at the damage that has been done psychologically, the trauma that has been done, and the trauma that has been passed down from generation to generation, it's still happening. It's not undone. If you think about the term epigenetics and what epigenetics is and how there's a coding that happens over time when you are prolonged to trauma for a long period of time, it changes the structure of your DNA. And it passes down from generation to generation. So what I mean by that is these fights and these complaints and stuff that's happening in marriages, a lot of this stuff is because people have not healed and they don't know how to manage their emotions. They don't know how to manage conflict. They don't know how to do any of that. It's not that you have the bad partner, it's that we have to do a lot of healing. We have to also change the way we see the Black man and the way the Black man sees the Black woman. A lot of that changing has to become because it's all stemming back from slavery when we were not looked at as anything. We were animals, we were chattel. So when you look at all that trauma that has been happening and pushed through a dominant narrative, the white narrative, the Western narrative about who we are in this country, we start to treat each other just the same way our oppressors treated us. So I think we have a lot of healing, and if we would just heal as a community, we would see a lot of healthier marriages and a lot of healthier relationships instead of trying to be like the others. We're unique. We can't keep doing what the others do because it's not working. It's not working for us.
Hey everybody, I want you guys to know who I'm talking to. I'm speaking to Dr. Shauna Etienne. She's a freshly minted doctor from Rutgers University. She's also one of our faculty members in the Black Business School, actually. She teaches on business processes. She runs her own practice, and she's an expert on business processes and how to run a business that is going to be bulletproof, basically. So if you want to take a look at her class, you can go to theblackbusinessschool.com, THE, blackbusinessschool.com, take a look. Also, she is an expert on marriage and family therapy. If you want to know more about that work, go to savingblackmarriages.com. That's savingblackmarriages.com. Okay, so Dr. Shauna, I'm going to be an armchair therapist right quick, and I'm going to throw out something that this is like Uncle Boyce logic, not backed by any scientific data other than my observation. But
there were a lot of therapists are like that.
There you go. Right. I'm like that therapy you got from your uncle that done lived a few things and can tell you some stuff. I believe this. Look, I believe that I kind of did this just today. I was thinking about the kinds of people that you really don't want to try to build relationships with. And I'm not just talking about romantic relationships. I'm talking about business, friendships, all of that, right? And in fact, everybody should know this. Everybody on our team, when we first interacted with you, the conversations we all had about you were always very, very pleasant. We were like, gosh, she is so professional. She's so great to work with. She knows how to resolve any dispute. It's not like, we felt like Shauna was going to come in there cussing and screaming and, you know what I mean? Like, y'all, you know what I mean? Like, there was something, like, I'll be like, gosh, I messed up so bad. She probably should have cussed me out, and she didn't. She greeted me with a smile and said, okay, let's figure this out. Let's work this out. And I mean, so it's great, right? So you are a guru at, I think, maintaining healthy relationships all the way across the board. And that's one of the reasons why we really want to work more with you. It's because we respect that. And so I was thinking about some things that, you know, just from my experience, you know, a lot of young people ask me questions about, you know, relationships or whatever, especially maybe young ladies, like trying to figure guys out and everything. And I was telling a young lady that I was speaking to, I said, I think you should be cautious about having relationships with people who have trouble uttering these specific words. Okay, the list is very short. I think you should be careful about having a relationship with somebody that has a hard time saying thank you when you do something nice for them. A very hard time being with somebody who says, I appreciate you or I need you, right? If someone can't admit that they need you or that at least that they really appreciate you, that's a problem. If somebody's, or in fact, if they're going the other direction and insisting that they don't need you, like I don't need no man, or I don't, or I could be with any woman I want. I don't really. That's not fun for you. That's uncomfortable. And then the big one for me is I think it's very hard to have a relationship with somebody who refuses to say the words "I'm sorry." You know,
I'm glad you said that one.
You say it again?
I'm glad you said that one.
Yeah, I think that, you know, when you are dealing, and some of y'all out here are in relationships of all kinds, friendships, business relationships, or romantic relationships. And I just don't think it's fun or healthy to try to build a relationship with somebody who can never admit when they are wrong. Like every time you say, you know, when you did that, it really hurt me. And I wish you hadn't have done that. And they flip it back and say, well, I did that because you did that to me, or this is what's wrong with you. Right? That seems very toxic to me, very problematic. I'd like to get your take on that as a therapist, in terms of, you know, not just your opinion on my opinion, but just what you think about what I just said.
You want to say that's a therapist? It's going to take forever. But no, let me try to sum this up. Because I hear what you're saying, and I agree with 95% of what you're saying, right? I agree with it. But then there's that 5%, and we have to think about the context that these situations are placed in. Right? Because if everything that I do, you're saying thank you, I appreciate you, thank you, it's sort of like inauthentic, right? So it really does depend on the context that we put it in. To say thank you, it also depends on somebody's upbringing and what their culture was, and when I say culture, I'm not talking about race or ethnicity. I'm speaking of their upbringing, their raisins, their values, their beliefs, their traditions. It really depends on that, of who you're married to. Because I remember like being married to my husband, who is of Haitian descent. It was a shocker for a few years because culturally speaking, we do things differently, you know? So like he may say, and remember, English was not his first language, although he speaks it very well. It was not his first language. It was Creole and French. So when he says certain things to me, it can come off as abrasive and as though I'm not appreciated or valued, right? It can come off as very like, what? Who are you talking to? You crazy? You know? But if I was one of those people that say, no, you don't appreciate me, you hardly say thank you, and you don't say I'm sorry, I would have left this marriage a long time ago. Right? So it really does depend on the context. I had to get to the point where he had to learn my culture, my upbringing, I have to learn his. And I remind him. I'm like, damn, babe, you know, you could have said thank you. He's like, oh, I'm sorry, babe, I'm sorry. He says thank you. Because it doesn't register in his head. But it's not because he's not thankful for me. It's not because he doesn't appreciate me. And when he's wrong, you know, he doesn't say sorry how I would like him to say sorry. We're still working on that. But it wasn't enough for me to jump ship. And that's why I said, I believe in what you're saying, 95%. And then that's that 5%, given the context, given the situation, that given the culture, a lot of different variables that's going to go into it. So I wouldn't have somebody come to therapy for me and they're like ready to just throw in a towel because they're not hearing thank you, I need you and appreciate you, and I'm sorry. Now, when we talk about toxicity, we put the toxic stuff on it. Then those things become very important because they hurt. Because those things, you can easily couple those with the emotion of rejection. And when people feel rejected, it's really hard to get over that. You really have to work through that, right? So even though, like, so how you say, like, how I am with your crew, working with your crew, when things happen between you and us, I don't look at you as rejecting me. You get what I'm saying? But if I look at you through that lens of feeling rejected, feeling abandoned, feeling not appreciated, then my reaction and my interaction with you would be a lot different. But it's all in how we perceive our partners. I don't see you as toxic for me. I don't see my husband as toxic for me. You get what I'm saying? And I hope he doesn't see me as toxic for him. So when you don't have that negative perception of your partner, it's easier to work through all the bumps, the valleys, and the dips that relationships naturally go through. Even business relationships, we're going to have dips in the valley. But the minute we start seeing each other as toxic, it changes the whole ballgame.
Interesting. That's really interesting. And what it does is it seems that it's really asking, you to take responsibility for what you can control, which is the lens through which you're seeing the whole interaction, right? Which says, maybe the person didn't say I'm sorry because they've got an issue, but perhaps if I see this through the brightest lens possible, so that there aren't those misunderstandings and hurt feelings that muddle communication, at least I can be 100% clear that, if I'm disappointed in something that you said, it's not because I'm looking to be disappointed. I'm expecting you to disappoint me, or I'm expecting you to disappoint me like a person that disappointed me in the past, right?
Yeah.
So that's so interesting. Even as I was reading that list to you, I was thinking, I said, this little list, it comes from the bias I have from my own experience. Literally when I wrote the part about, saying I'm sorry, not saying I'm sorry, I remember people I dealt with who didn't want to say I'm sorry. I'm talking about people maybe that I worked with, and literally one particular relationship where she refused to apologize. And I said, my God, am I going to do all the apologizing here? And it made me feel like, okay, so we're moving forward with this understanding that you're perfect and everything that's wrong here is because there's something wrong with me, right? And maybe there's a better lens I could look through it with, but I was pissed off. I'm like, what you mean? I got to do all the heavy lifting and do all the apologizing? I ain't doing that shit.
So that's the magic.
What's the
lens was colored with your experience. So you brought that into the relationship.
That's, what? You are so correct. I want to ask you a question. What advice would you give, for Black couples that want to improve the relationship they have? Maybe either fix a problem or just take a good relationship and make it great. Make Black love great again. What advice would you give to, any Black couples that are out there?
Wow, there's so many. It depends on what how they view certain things in terms of shared meaning, like creating a legacy with each other. I think that's really, really fun that we can do, right? What do you want to be known as? What do you want to be known as? I know my husband and I, we share the vision of want to be known for helping as many youth as we can get through college, right? So we want to be known for that. And when you work on a project together with that vision in mind, it could be, of course, you're going to experience stress, right? But it could be fun because it's something that you're working together. And while doing that, you have to keep your mind open that you're going to learn something new about your partner. So I always tell people, learn something new about your partner. Oftentimes we make the mistake of assuming we know our partner to the T. Oh, he ain't going nowhere. He ain't never going to leave me. Whatever. She good. That ain't going to bother her. She cool. Not realizing that over time, as we age, we develop and our tastes change and our desires change. These things change. So you always have to keep reinventing a relationship. Take your time to really get to know your partner. Ask them bizarre questions. I know when I ask my husband questions, my husband look at me like, oh God, what the hell is about to happen right now? Because I could be asking him stuff like, babe, how did you get that scar on your knee? And I want to know everything about it. Like, oh, you fell? So where were you at? What was happening first? Because I want to know something new about you. The minute I feel like I know everything about you, you're boring. You're boring. There's nothing else. Even when my husband started going through this whole midlife crisis, I laugh constantly because he's learning something new about himself. And it causes me some stress. It causes me some pain, like, oh God, like what are you doing now? Oh, you bought this? Oh, why do you need that? Oh my God, what? And it stresses me out. But when I look at how excited he is, and I look at all his smiles and him going on Amazon looking for little tools and gadgets for new stuff that he's going to explore, I'm learning something new about him. Sometimes it's not about me. It's not about what you can give me. It's what can I learn about you and then enhance you. And if we both have that mindset about each other, the relationship can improve.
Interesting. Okay, so Okay, so basically, it seems to me that it's a matter of seeing yourself or seeing your partner as someone who's always evolving, and kind of knowing that, there's not a point where you say, okay, I know everything there is to know about you, I'm done. You don't know everything there is to know about them, because you don't understand every dynamic in terms of who they are now, but you definitely don't understand every dynamic in terms of who they're going to be in the future, right? Because who they are at 40 is going to be different from who they were at 30 or who they were at 20. So I agree with that. I think that's really interesting. I think about my own parents. They're going into their 45th year. What year is this? This will be number 44, their next anniversary. And and I saw them just change, through the years. Going all the way back to the 1970s, and they dressed different. They were less mature back then, and then they went into the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s and the 2010s, and each time they kept evolving. But what was great was they were evolving kind of together. Like they literally are like siblings. It's just sort of like one with the other one with the one. And it is fascinating, because it does seem that when you have that fork though, where the growth starts happening like this, and there's no effort to kind of bridge that gap, then that's when you're going to have the issues. Is that pretty accurate?
That is very accurate. And that broke, where it starts breaking, you guys start going on two different paths. I will always question a couple about their perspective of their partner. Because if you start to develop a negative perspective about your partner, even their growth and their development is going to bother you. You become a bitter sister and a bitter brother. Everything is going to bother you. The way they eat, they sleep, if they change anything, what you doing that for? You probably got a girl. You trying to get fit. No, maybe he's just growing and changing, and you want him to stay the same, and you can't go with the change, and you're bitter. You still have the hurt and the pain. Sometimes a lot of people they hold on this hurt and this pain like a cloak. It's like their security blanket, and they don't want to let go of it. They don't want to run the risk of seeing their partner in a different light, seeing them from a positive perspective. You're unhappy because you keep holding on the past, right? You got to learn to let go. Things are going to happen in every relationship that we are in. We're always going to find something that hurts us and upsets us. Now, there's going to be some things that's unforgivable, but then if that's the case, then you need to let the relationship go. Why are you still holding on to the relationship?
Oof, wow. That's the crazy thing, is that I remember when I was really young, and I remember watching Oprah one time. I didn't watch Oprah every day, but I happened to have it on. And I remember her saying, she was like in her 40s. That's how long ago it was. She was in her 40s at the time. And she said, I can't even imagine in my 40s being with the people I dated when I was in my 20s. And that made me think. And I said, this is interesting. So it seems like people change a lot. Maybe I was 20 years old, but I remember thinking, it seems like people change a lot, and I wonder how you can have this thing where okay, and maybe in 1998, you're a perfect fit. But then 2008, will you still be a fit? 2018, will you still be a fit? And I think that's that interesting thing about long-term relationships. So it almost seems to say that when you form that long-term relationship, from your perspective, you must know what commitment really means. Like, commitment doesn't mean I'm committed to what I see in front of me right now. It means I'm committed to whatever, comes to be in the future that neither one of us can predict. And then also, I think it seems to me that commitment also understands or means you understand the importance of flexibility in your thinking, that you can't sort of have a rigid perspective and point of view and then sort of be thrown into a loop when things change. Yeah. Is that accurate?
Yeah, you got to be flexible. You got to be flexible. I mean, of course, we all have our non-negotiables, right? We have these things that if this hit, I'm sorry, I'm good, I'm out. We all have that. But what we don't tend to analyze, write down, assess, tweak, change, whatever the case is, are our negotiables. Right? And sometimes we start to see our negotiables as our non-negotiables. You can't have a whole freaking page of non-negotiables and nothing you're willing to be flexible on. But there are a lot of people that's like that. For them, everything has to be freaking perfect. And I love to get into the heads of those people to go back to their childhood, to go back to their first rejection, their first hurt. I love to go all the way back because we become so rigid that we don't allow flexibility. And guess what? Usually when I come across people like that, I see it in their relationship with their children. I see it in their relationship with their work, their business. They have that personality that's hard to shake. That's hard to shake. So you got to be really careful about that kind of stuff. And also for me, if I was to ever be single again and have to date, listen, I'm diagnosing for personality disorders. And there's some listen, I don't know. I can't be in a relationship with somebody who has a personality disorder. I really can't. So maybe half the people we're talking about have personality disorders. I don't know. It's some crazy things.
But you know, I'll tell you what, Dr. Shana, I really want to try to understand, you know, I'll tell you the truth. When I look back at people I've known who have that list of non-negotiables, and I remember having a friend who had a list of 27 things that a man had to do in order for there to be a fit. I don't see a lot. I mean, not to say men and women don't have issues equally. We know that's true, but, you know, or at least I think that's true. But I've never seen a man with a long list. You know, I have plenty of female friends who have a list. But, you know, guys, a lot of my guy friends, you know, they might have a list in terms of, you know, looks and personality and a couple other things. But it's not like, if I'm with a bunch of my guy friends and somebody says, well, I got this list of all the things a woman must have in order for us to have a relationship, we would probably look at him like he's weird. You know what I mean? Is there a gender difference that you've noticed, or am I even being a sexist pig by even making that suggestion?
A sexist pig.
It's the Me Too era. I'm going to go ahead and call myself that name before I give other people a chance to do it, because I like to ask honest questions. And in this world, when you're a man, it seems like with the morning when you wake up and open your mouth, you're going to get called something by somebody. So I just accept it. Go ahead, please.
A sexist pig. Well, let me say this. There are some men that do have like ridiculous lists. And a lot of them are surface things. You know, it's like early, you're looking for a Barbie. Okay, yeah. In America, great. Like sometimes I look at it like that, right? But what I see the difference between a man and a woman when they come with these lists and these non-negotiable stuff, men tend to be, not all the time, but, and I don't want to come up as a sexist pig either, but men tend to be a little bit more flexible, right? They flex. They go with the changes. As long as you have their core stuff that they absolutely need, if you fall over another category or you may not have it, they're a little bit more forgiving if your core, the core stuff that you have is strong, right? But women, some women, are a little bit more strict on their list. But what I find with women is the older they become, the more they start to take things off that list. When the reality sets in, and what's unfortunate, if we're going to be honest, we're going to be transparent, what's unfortunate, I know people that have like these lists that I have treated, and then they'll come back and care with me 5 years later. Now they're 45 and still not married, don't have any children, and now they're dating low quality men. And I'm looking at them like, what happened to the list? You know, and they're like, well,
so you're telling them, so you're like, look, I didn't tell you to throw the list in the garbage. I just said scratch a couple things off, be a little flexible. You don't rip the list up and burned it. You ain't got a list. You have zero standards. That ain't good. That ain't good.
They blame it on me. They say, well, you say I needed to be a little bit more flexible. Damn, I say lower your core standards. What are you talking about? I was talking about needed to have a Maserati. Be a little bit more flexible on that. To Maserati. I didn't say go with somebody with no license and a bus card. What the hell?
Well, you know, I'll tell you what. I think you know, I don't know. I don't know how to give people advice on what to, you know, on what to get and how to get it, but I do know how to share a point of view. And I've always just kind of, you know, I've always kind of talked to people about, you know, just sort of, you know, models that allow us to really understand what's really happening, you know, when you're talking about a relationship. In my mind, again, maybe it's because I'm an economist, I see a relationship as a trade. You know, you like what I got, I like what you got, let's get together and make this work, you know. And so to me, in most trades, the more you offer, the more you can pick and choose in terms of what you're going to receive in return for that, right? And I think that, you know, so for example, if I'm not doing anything to make a woman happy, if I'm not doing anything to provide an appearance, you know, to dress nicely, whatever it is, you know what I mean? Send her flowers, you know, tell her that she's beautiful. Whatever it is that guys have to do that make women happy. If I'm not offering any of that, then every time I choose not to offer something, my options and become more limited, right? You know, I'm not going to have as many people interested, right? So the goal is, to me, the more you want to receive, the more you should offer to give. You should say, and the way you learn how to give appropriately, I think, is you learn what your customer wants, just like selling a product. You know, like, okay, so how can I make this woman as happy as possible so that she'll make me as happy as possible, right? That's what it seems. And I don't see people making that simple logical connection. I hear a lot of people that can talk all day about what they need somebody else to do for them, but they can't really figure out what they need to do, you know, themselves to make themselves, you know, a quality candidate. You know, or if you ask them, like, what are your weaknesses? Where do you have some areas you got to get a little better at? A lot of people can't tell you. A lot of people cannot tell. They can tell you all day what somebody else's weakness is, but they can't tell you what their own weakness is, because in their minds, everything they got is perfect. And if you can't love me exactly the way I am, the way I want to be all the time, then you ain't right for me and you ain't no good. I never grew up like that. I grew up believing that you can't act any old kind of way. You can't talk to people any old kind of way. You can't come out to your woman acting like a fool, looking stupid and being mean and abusive and acting like an asshole, and then get mad when she don't want to be around you. If you value her, you put on your best behavior. Tell me, give me a perspective on that, because I know you got to go, and I'll let you get the last word.
I'm laughing over here because, you know, there was a researcher, his research was debunked, by the way, and he had that whole concept that you had, like how you said you look at it as a trade, and it's called quid pro quo. Quid pro quo? It's like
quid pro quo.
Quid pro quo, right? It doesn't work in relationships. That doesn't work. So if you go in there and you say, you know, this is what I'm going to do, this is what you have to do, and as long as we're doing this, we're good, right? Because no relationship is really set up like that, right? There's going to be some times where you're going to do more than me, and I'm going to do more than you, right? But if you're keeping score, you keep in check, it becomes inauthentic. It becomes inauthentic, right? So I don't necessarily agree with that. And I know a lot of people that come into my office with that ideology, and it's toxic. It's toxic, especially since Well,
I was saying, wow, I just mute myself because the guys downstairs are making noise, so I don't want it to disrupt what you're saying. What you're saying is more important than what I'm saying. So if I move my lips and you don't hear me, just ignore it. I want to hear you.
I was saying it's toxic, especially because if men do that, a lot of our men, not all, a lot of our men are going to set themselves up to fail, because women are the best record keepers ever. And not only with women, if you mess up with us, see, if we mess up with you, we just don't get a point. We just don't get a point. If you mess up with us, you like lose like 3 to 5 points. so it's the worst thing. I see it all the time. I'm like, what the hell? I'll tell you a quick story. So my husband came home one day, right? And I remember I was holding him to a standard. This is something that people should never do. I remember we were fresh in our dating. I was holding him to a standard that I had from my previous marriage, because I'm remarried, and there were some things in my first marriage that I actually loved and enjoyed that I don't have in this marriage, right? And there's some things in this marriage I love and enjoy that I didn't have in my first marriage. So every marriage is different. But the funny part, it is not really funny, but the funny part is my husband came back from his golf trip. Every year he goes away for his birthday. He's a Gemini like you. He goes away for his birthday, and he goes with these guys. And it was this one guy that was telling him all the time. He said, yo, brother, what you doing? He said, I'm ordering some flowers for my wife. I send her flowers every day. We've been married for 20-something years, whatever, and I've been sending her flowers every day. And so my husband's like, man, that's good. I don't do that for my wife. I should probably do that. So he listened to this guy, and like he starts sending me flowers, right, to my office. And I'm like, what the hell am I getting all these flowers for? I don't have a green thumb. I like flowers. I don't have a green thumb. And he's buying me orchids, which is my favorite flower, and they're very expensive. So these suckers are dying. They're dying. And my assistant was like, did you guys get in an argument or a fight? Like, and I was like, No, I said, I'll ask him what's going on when we get home. So she was like, because usually I've never seen, all the years I worked here, I've never seen any flowers come through, right? So my husband said to me, I said, what's going on? He sent me these flowers, they're dying, I'm trying to keep them alive. They're orchids, they're not supposed to die like that, but I don't have a green thumb, I don't have the best office for this. And so he was like, well, I was listening to this guy, he told me to buy these flowers. And so I'm just trying to make you happy. I'm just trying to make you happy. But that's not going to make me happy. That's not what I need to be happy. He's taking somebody else's prescription for my marriage, and it's not working, right? So then finally, I didn't say anything. So I said, well, thank you, baby. I appreciate that, right? I appreciate that. Even though they're dying, Shauna, my assistant name was Shauna as well, my previous one. Shauna and I, we're laughing. These flowers are dying. And then all of a sudden, the flowers just stop abruptly. They just stop. So now I'm wondering, did I do something wrong? Did I say something? Is it because I didn't cook last night? What the hell happened? And I come home and I ask him, I say, well, I don't get flowers anymore. He's like, oh, I'm going to get on it. I'm going to order them. The thing is, there's no secret formula. Like, we listen to other people, but sometimes other people's advice is not good for us. Had he just taken the time out and really learned me and got to see the stuff that I enjoy, what I look forward to every day, it doesn't cost money. It doesn't cost money to do activities with me. It doesn't cost money to work out with me. It doesn't cost money that if I'm cooking, you're cleaning. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't cost money to be a teammate for me. But my husband's culture is very different. They grow up in his household where the man provides everything. And the woman just, whatever. Your money is your money, and my money takes care of everything. Right? And that's how he grew up. But there was an emotional disconnection. There was an emotional disconnection that I needed. So I had to teach him, and he doesn't always get it right, but he's trying. So I want to say, I just stay away from giving people advice because there's no cookie cutter advice for every couple. Every couple is different, and they really do need individualized attention. So even though what you're saying, it might work for you in your relationship, but that's not going to work for a lot of other relationships. Besides, there's so much research that says that doesn't work.
Well, you know what? Actually, I think that what you actually said is that you just actually, in my opinion, I believe you actually confirmed that it does work. And let me tell you why. Yeah, what happened was it wasn't the idea of him giving you what you wanted was not the mistake he made. The mistake was that the idea of giving him the idea of him giving you something of value was not incorrect. What was incorrect was he didn't give you the thing that you value. And what I've always said to people is find out what I tell guys. I say find out what she values and give it to her in abundance if you can. That will increase your stock, as you mentioned. It'll give you points. And then you can come and you can cash those points in to get what you want, what you value. That was my thought, not quid pro quo, like, okay, I did one thing for you, you owe me now. None of that, no debt, none of that. I'm talking about just making yourself the best candidate you can be by saying, okay, like you like this color roses, okay, you don't like flowers, okay, all right, so what, and then getting in your mind, a mental note of that, right? And then delivering those things to make yourself a higher quality candidate. Just like.
And I'm not disagreeing with that. In that concept, I understand that and I agree with that. But do it because you want to do it. Yeah. Not because you think you're racking up points.
Right. Well, I think that, the thing is, what if you just want to rack up points, right? Then you're doing it because you want to do it, because you want to be treated well. And that's my point. Like, a lot of people, when they say, I want to be treated well, they're looking for somebody who's just going to treat them well just because. I don't think that's always 100% true. There are nice people and bad people, so you want to be with a nice person. But even nice people treat some people, at level 4. They treat some people level 10. The question is, how do you become a level 10 for that person? Well, you do that by adding value, right? I have people in my life that add tremendous value. I treat them extremely well. But I have people that add no value, and they don't get that same treatment. You see, the way I talk to you is not the way I talk to everyone, because you've added value in so many ways. And I'm like appreciative. So it's like, okay, well, let me put my A game out here to show appreciation, because you can't put your A game out for everybody. We know that. You can't treat a person on the street the same way you treat your spouse, right? It won't add up, right? So you figure out how to add value, and then you'll get value in return. Simple. Am I right or am I right? I'm playing.
I just think it's a little bit more nuanced than that. Because I know there's people right here listening right now, and I can just picture them because I get them in my office all the time. You know, he just doesn't do for me what I do for him. And it's all through her own perception. And he might be busting his ass for her. But if it doesn't look like how she wants it to look, then for her, it's not valuable. It's not valuable. And it wears him down. And it deteriorates him. And it makes him feel rejected. And vice versa, the same is true when he feels like, you know, no matter what she does, it ain't good enough. And it's going to wear her down. So it really depends on what we're putting value on. Right? So so like, for example, even if my husband spent countless hours doing everything that I wanted to do, and he's doing it because he wants to make me happy, and he thinks in turn this is going to give me what I want as well, and this is great because this is what we do. I do for her, she does for me, da 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 da, and he's consistent in that same routine. But if I develop and I change and I grow, and that's no longer fun for me, what happens with that? What happens if he can't keep up with my change? What happens if he's stuck where he's at? And now he starts to feel, damn, once upon a time you used to like this. Now it ain't good enough for you.
Yeah. Oof. And those are the tough situations in relationships, right? I think that could be a whole nother conversation we can have. Because I know you got to go because you said you had
What time is it?
It's at 1:04, and you said you have to go get your son.
I love talking to you, Dr. B.
What'd you say?
I just love talking to you. I can talk to you all day. We could break this thing down, but we're about to save Black marriages.
Yes. Well, we got to do this again. So, you know, since you're teaching the Black Business School and everything else, and I have been wanting to do this for the longest, you should just come in, you know, once a week, and we can have it. We can talk it out, because I think people that really want to, you know, find these solutions, you know, we're the scholars that I think can be of help to you. You know, you went to that big white university, but you're not out here trying to go save a bunch of other folks.
The white world. I would say the white world. I would be a crack-a-coon.
Yeah, we both of us went to these big white universities, and we came home, and I hope that the community appreciates that. And I know where your heart is, and I know where mine is as well. So I appreciate you, Dr. Shauna. Thank you so much for hanging out. It looks like she might have frozen. Are you there, Shauna?